It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesdays, and I am really struggling with getting into this video quickly because there's a lot of caveats in these things. And yes, there's no Zelda video this week. It's not done yet. I'll talk about why once the video's out. It's just taking a lot longer than expected. Not that it's going to be amazing or anything like that. It's more I've had to do a lot of other things that I was not expecting to. But this was a really interesting question that came up on Monday, and I thought it would make a good Wellness Wednesday video anyway, because it's very appropriate to some of the, hot take subjects of now. The question was, how do we differentiate between those who perceive others wrong from those who are simply acting on prejudice? And my interpretation of that question, just to be clear, is how do I know if I'm being prejudiced or I just may have made an error in judgment? And there's two schools of thought. One is it doesn't matter. It's important to be right. So if you focus on being right, then it'll take care of itself. And the other is, well, prejudice is when you are judging somebody on a different standard based on who or what they are, as opposed to objectively judging their behavior. And then, of course, that leads to the obvious and much more difficult follow-up question. Well, how do I know which is which? Right? So that's what I'm going to tackle here. I'll do the help support this channel and then we'll get into it. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Or the GoFundMe for the men's groups. And it's going to be other stuff eventually. But we've been putting a lot of work into that lately. Getting the team up to speed. Getting the structure set up. That's part of what's kept me busy. And it's one of those things where some people were on vacation because, we're not quite into fall yet, even though it's the middle of September. So yeah, it's been a lot of shifted focus and attention and just getting tired and feeling overwhelmed and all the good stuff when you're building something. And, emotional overwhelm is one of those things that can compromise your decision making. And so at least for me, it's very important that I stop when I'm making a moral judgment and really make sure that I want to go there. Because, I've been accused of every bigotry in the book. Like literally every single one. Because it's an easy thing to throw at somebody to shut them up and shut them down, right? We've all had experiences with that. And it's very, very hard since people just use it as a tactic to know, when am I actually doing this? And sometimes it's really hard. There were a couple times I caught myself in decision making recently. One was with the, Drew Barrymore and Bill Maher both bringing their shows back. And Drew Barrymore, she comes back. It's like, well, I'm sure she means well. Let's give her benefit of the doubt. And people freaked out and she changed her mind. And I think she was right to change her mind. But then when Bill Maher did the exact same thing, I'm like, yeah, asshole. I was like, wait a minute. I'm judging him very differently than I'm judging her. That's not okay. Just because I like her better. And then, of course, she reversed her decision, which is why I like her better. I think that her decision may have been out of naivete, whereas he really doesn't care about people, in my opinion. He's one of those guys who likes to get all the credit for being a smart leftist when he's really not. And there's nothing wrong with not being. I'm not saying, there aren't completely moral conservatives out there. I think I know some. It's just, he is trying to do the smart guy thing instead of the good guy thing. And I don't respect that. Smarts are overrated. Precisely because the minute emotion creeps into our thinking, we can get led astray by our self-perception as a smart person. And sometimes our easy heuristics can lead us into some really bad decision making. And the Russell Brand stuff has really challenged me that way, because that's a weird combination of things. Because again, Russell Brand, in my opinion, is a thoroughly unlikable guy. Um, he hasn't been a comedian really in years. He does like COVID conspiracy stuff now, which, is immediately going to put me off. I have long COVID. It's real. It wasn't the freaking vaccine. I got COVID. I have all these weird health things. I was shitting blood for 4 months. I didn't make that up, and it wasn't after the vaccine. Um, Sorry for the overshare. And and the allegations, when you just look at the top line, they're disgusting. You know, and I use the term disgusting deliberately, because I do find this thing of grown ass people involved with teenagers. I find it gross. There's no other way to describe my reaction. It disgusts me. Because I know how I look at a 16-year-old, and that's a kid. It's not a potential romantic partner, and there have been times where it's like, yeah, some of them, they know that they can ingratiate themselves to older people through flattery and playing to their ego, and you got to watch it. You really do, because even if you have um no thoughts that way at all, they can read in things. You have to be very, very solid with boundaries with people of that perception as reality age group for numerous reasons, not least because there is a duty of care. They can't be any older than they are. Then when you get in, so yeah, I think what he did is disgusting, but I think a lot of people are disgusting that other people find so funny. I've found some of the jokes on Rick and Morty pretty disgusting. And, all the incest with minors jokes that, well, and then you get into the question of, is that more disgusting because of the guy's personal behavior? No, they were disgusting to begin with. There's a reason you don't go certain places. And the argument, well, I was trying to be shocking. Well, yeah, but when you notice that people are not going, oh, that's so wrong. Okay, that's why it's funny. They're taking it in a way that maybe isn't healthy. If you're a person with a soul, you change your approach. That's what most comedians, I know myself included, do. When something's not being received in the intended way, we refine it. And, so that's my bias declared on Russell Brand. But then it's a question of, if someone's behavior is legal, how much of it is our business, even if it's disgusting? And this is where we get into the whole, well, money, power, all that stuff. Yeah, I admit I don't know what to think in that regard. Because what I do know is that cases like this involving major celebrities are handled very, very differently and evolve very, very differently than regular people. And it's the regular people I care about because, guys like Russell Brand have so much money. If they're smart, they have investments. And even if he never worked a day in his life from now on, he'll be okay. A guy that gets falsely accused, loses his job or has a mental health crisis because of it and then can't work, that's a whole other ball game. Similar for a regular person who is taken advantage of as a teenager. And, I work with both men and women who fit that description. And they walk around with that for a really long time. There is so much shame. They often don't tell someone. And when they do tell someone, they have to be believed or it's catastrophic. And the debates of this stuff happening in public are causing damage to these people. I mean, the number of guys who finally opened up about the abuse they experienced from at the hands of female partners. It was rough for me. I can't imagine what it was like for them because I'm usually pretty good at the cognitive empathy processing, right? But there was just so much pain. It stayed with me. And so the one side of me has a knee jerk with the Russell Brand thing to believe the accusations. But then I remember, hold up, it's not unusual. This is why I don't work with teens except under very specific, highly monitored conditions. I've had situations myself where the minute I said no to a teenager, they accuse me of abuse. And thank God I have procedures in place where uh my teen clients, it's text only. So all communications are saved. This was not in the peer counseling field. This was a game dev job. And it was pretty yikes that this younger person wanted something. I had to say no, and the abuse allegation happened. There was no abuse. No, you can't have this. You're not ready yet. Nobody else is getting this is not abuse. But this was somebody who'd spent a lot of time in the system and they knew that an abuse accusation immediately triggers a bunch of alarm bells. And, because I've been working with teenagers since I was a teenager myself, I very much like uh, youth work. It's my favorite age group. But those accusations come with the territory. And far more kids tell the truth than make stuff up. And it's not even making stuff up. It's certain psychological conditions and certain developmental places where they actually believe they're being abused because anything that hurts them is abuse to them. And it's tragic, but it's awful to be on the receiving end of that too. Because if you're not careful and you don't document everything, you're fucked. Fortunately, I documented things, but a lot of people find out the hard way the first time. This is why it's very, very important to have training. And so, I'm sort of a wait and see thing with Russell Brand. I've made comments about how these things would not happen nearly this often if we didn't glamorize the idea of dating teenagers. that it's somehow an ego boost to date somebody much younger than you, especially men. There's a bit of mockery around the whole cougar thing. I don't like it. The idea that if an older woman is sexually confident, she's a laughing stock. Um, I don't like that. And I don't think that um, men who do prefer to date older women for various reasons are treated like an anomaly. Somehow these are all just social things. We got so used to older man, younger woman that we don't question it. That's another prejudice. There's also, a big difference between people who happen to meet someone, like Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones. That was the example that got thrown in my face. Uh, Compared to a guy like Bill Maher, who habitually dates women 30 years younger than him. If it happens once or twice, that's one thing. But God, I remember in the 90s, it was very different. I mean, Juliette Lewis was a teenager when she dated Brad Pitt. He was not a teenager. And Johnny Depp dated Winona Ryder when she was a teenager and he wasn't. But at least those guys were in their mid 20s, whereas Russell Brand was 30 and dating 16-year-olds. We can say that alone, no. But when it comes to criminal charges, we don't know. And I have to keep in mind that just because I find him disagreeable and just because I know the statistics and I'm inclined to believe people, I'm inclined to give benefit of doubt for people who make claims of abuse. I know firsthand that some people do cry wolf. And that doesn't, and this is the thing that I wish, this is one weird trick to prevent yourself from getting in kind of a prejudice spiral. I don't have to judge right away. Withholding judgment is sometimes the right call. Wait and see. I can have initial reactions like, the Hunter Biden gun charge thing. It's like, yeah, he probably did it. He probably did knowingly lie. I don't like the law because lying is a part of addiction. Being in denial is a part of addiction. It's a gotcha law. I don't like it. He probably did it. The law's the law. The law should apply to everyone equally. Whether it does or not, I'm not American. I don't know. But the thing is, he hasn't gone to trial yet. And so saying, I think he probably did it, I have to put the condition on it. Or I'm being biased just because I'm so friggin' sick of hearing about the guy. Holy shit. Stop ruining your entire family's lives. Get it together, man. Guy's a disaster. And I don't have a lot of sympathy for people who do not have financial barriers to intervention, who just are disasters. But he still deserves his day in court. He still deserves to not be prejudged. Why? Because everybody does. And that's very important when we get into the issues that hit those disgust and fear buttons. With the trans medical stuff for kids, drag story hour. These create really visceral feelings, especially when people start flinging videos around of things. And there's people who are intentionally short-circuiting people's intellects and pulling that whole debate out of the realm of facts and into the realm of emotions that people think are facts. And I mean, one of the things they do with that is that drag story time is a specific thing. It is just reading books and singing age-appropriate songs. That is not sexual content. If someone wearing a dress reading a book to kids is sexualizing children, then every trad wife out there is sexualizing their children every story time. It's just insane. The act of wearing a dress is not sexual. It's performance. There are videos circulating of people doing like kind of bump and grind dance moves. People say it's twerking. It's not twerking. Twerking's a very specific thing. I have not seen twerking. That doesn't really matter. It's suggestive choreography, and there are kids in the audience. I was at a show few weeks ago where it said 16 plus at the door. But because it was a restaurant that was open to the public, there was a woman there with her two kids, and I don't know how old they were, but they looked about 10 years old to me. And the queens actually stopped the show. And, you know, they were sheepish about it, but they were like, are you going to be here much longer? Because this is a 16 plus event. We didn't know there was going to be kids here. And so they actually waited until the mother with her two kids left before. It was a lyric. It was a lyric thing. They weren't doing anything really sexual in terms of dance moves or anything like that. It was bad words. But they actually stopped the show to check it out. There are people who are doing it responsibly. They don't deserve to be banned because of a handful of videos. We don't know the context of these things. It could very well be that the parents were told this is what it's going to be, and they decided to stay. Is that a good parenting decision? There's a lot of parenting things that people do that I don't agree with, right? That norms change in those regards, and I am very hesitant to be the arbiter of stuff I can't prove is harmful. And if you've ever been to one of those kids' beauty pageants, kids are shaking their ass for adult judges in those, and I'm like, I had to leave. It was horrifying. But, you know, America says that's okay. We don't have those the same way up here. But when I used to teach dance, there were debates about what was age-appropriate choreography. Unfortunately, the competitions at the time were rewarding more sexualized music video style choreography, which is why it was a debate in the first place. Unfortunately, the studio I was at believed no rump shaking for 6-year-olds, you know? But we all have something that's damaged. We all have certain people that we knee-jerk over because we have felt attacked by people who look like that or sound like that or believe certain things in common. But it is our responsibility to recognize that there are people from all identity groups who are shitty people and who behave badly. You have to actively prove that that is a feature, not a bug of the movement. And it's usually subcategories. Like I've had this ongoing fight with this guy who he's a, I don't know how you, conservative, U.S. conservative Christian. And he doesn't think it's rude for him to openly admit he thinks I'm going to hell for being Jewish. He doesn't see, it's like he can't help it. He said, I can't help it. It's scripture. And I have been going through the scripture where at no point does it say, you know, if you don't call yourself a Christian, you're going to hell. It's all about behavior. In fact, it says you will be judged as harshly by God as you judge other people. That's what it actually says. right? So I said to the guy, you're pretty much guaranteeing you're not getting into heaven by the way you're judging other people. It says so in John, in Corinthians, and a bunch of other places. Colosseum, there was another one there. It's like, but I have had Christians trying to shame me, Christians, I call them, trying to shame me since I was 9 years old. And I was told I was going to burn in hell forever because I had pale spotted skin. That doesn't mean every Christian. I have wonderful, great friends who are practicing Catholics. I know they don't think I'm going to hell. Being wary of certain types of people is totally understandable, especially on religious grounds. But you gotta give people a chance, little chances. Don't, hey, throw a brick at me. No, not that. But it doesn't hurt to just ask, what do you actually believe? And to me, you can't complain about other people's knee-jerk reactions if you're letting yourself get away with your own. There's a certain point where it's like, no, I am trying to keep myself safe instead of being open to grow. That's making me an asshole. It's the reason I self-describe as an asshole, because I have to remember, like, when it comes to stuff with Christianity, it's like, nope, you're being an asshole. Give them a chance. Find out what they really believe. And I mean, there are so many different types of Christianity out there too. And I think that some of it encourages people into acts of charity and community and some really great stuff. It's when any group, and I include Jewish groups in this, any group tries to force people into doing things instead of trying to persuade or assist them to do it, that's when I draw the line. And that is the same for everybody. Now, I will warn you, actively working to address your own prejudices makes you unpopular because you have to say no to people you like. You have to call bullshit on people you like. Do I like wading into debates about race, for instance? Absolutely not. But I got to sometimes, because somebody may listen to me when they won't listen to a black woman, for instance. It's fraught. And yeah, sometimes I get called a bunch of names from all sides because I get misjudged and because other people have prejudices based on mistreatment in the past. But I control me and my thought processes and my reactions. Feelings happen. Feelings are valid. Validate the feeling, wait, respond consciously. There is never an excuse to lash out, be wrong, and then say, well, you made me. The best way to make sure you're not being prejudiced is to recognize that you are responsible for your behavior. And that having a feeling doesn't justify abusing another person. You stick to that rule, you will be okay. You will not be perfect. You will still make mistakes, but you will catch them when they're relatively small. And that's the goal, not perfection. All right. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can't afford, at coffee.com/LeannaK, or GoFundMe for the men's groups. Thanks for watching an unplanned Wellness Wednesdays.